She grabbed my wrist so hard it actually hurt and whispered, "Please don't open that. If you do, we're done." The phone was already unlocked in my hand. The message preview was still on the screen. And in that moment, I realized whatever was inside mattered more than our entire relationship. So I opened it. Here's how it happened. We'd been together a little over 2 years. Not perfect, not terrible. The kind of relationship people describe as stable when they don't know what else to say. We lived together, shared bills, shared routines, shared a future we talked about casually but never locked in. Lately though, something felt off. Not in a dramatic way. No sudden distance. No obvious fights. Just small inconsistencies that didn't line up if you thought about them for more than a second. She guarded her phone in a way she never used to. Not hiding it, just always aware of where it was. Face down. Silent. Within reach. If I picked it up to move it, she'd glance over instinctively, like a reflex she couldn't control. I noticed, but I didn't accuse. I didn't snoop. I told myself I was being paranoid. People online love to jump to conclusions, and I didn't want to be that person. Then one night, while we were sitting on the couch, her phone lit up. She was in the kitchen. I was closer to the phone. The notification wasn't sexual. That's what messed with me. No hearts. No flirty emojis. Just a name I recognized, and a sentence that didn't make sense. "Did you tell him yet?" That was it. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't even pick it up. But something in my chest tightened in a way that felt familiar, like the beginning of a bad realization you don't want to finish having. When she came back, I asked casually, "Tell me what?" She froze for half a second, just long enough for me to notice. Then she laughed and said, "What?" I repeated the question, calm, neutral. She said I must have misread it, said it was about work, said it wasn't a big deal. Too many explanations, too fast. I let it go. At least that's what I told her. Over the next few weeks, the pattern repeated. Messages that didn't quite fit. Conversations that stopped when I walked into the room. Stories that changed slightly depending on when I asked. Still, nothing concrete. Nothing I could point to without sounding crazy. Until tonight, she was in the shower. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Same name. This time, the preview said something different. Tonight has to be the night. I didn't plan to look. I swear I didn't. My brain just filled in the worst possible meanings, and my hand moved before my conscience caught up. That's when she came out of the bathroom, towel around her shoulders, eyes immediately locking onto me and the phone in my hand. She crossed the room fast, grabbed my wrist, and begged. Not angry, not defensive, scared. That's what scared me, because people don't beg like that over nothing. When I opened the message, I expected to see cheating, plans, secrets, a name I didn't recognize. Instead, I saw something that made my stomach drop in a completely different way. Something that explained every weird moment, every half-truth, every hesitation. Something that made me realize I wasn't being cheated on. I was being prepared. And whatever she was about to tell me, she'd been waiting a long time to make sure I wouldn't leave before she did. The message wasn't romantic. It wasn't sexual. And somehow that made it worse. It was a screenshot of a calendar reminder. Not a phone calendar. A shared one. A single event highlighted in bold. Talk to him. No hearts. No emojis. No context. Just that. Below it, a reply from her. I will. I just need him stable first. Stable. That word stuck in my head like something sharp. I stared at the screen, then up at her. She was pale now, towel slipping slightly off her shoulder, hands trembling just enough that she tried to hide them by folding her arms. I asked her what it meant. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she said, "Can we sit down?" That was the moment I knew the truth wasn't something I'd get in a single sentence. It was something she'd rehearsed, something with timing, something she believed required the right conditions. We sat on the bed, the phone between us like evidence. She took a breath and said, "I didn't want you to find out like this. That sentence is never followed by anything good." She explained slowly, carefully, like she was walking through a minefield she'd mapped out long before tonight. The calendar belonged to her and someone else. Not a new person, not a stranger, someone from her past. Someone she'd never stopped talking to, just less openly. She said it wasn't cheating. She said it wasn't emotional either. She said it was transition. That was the word she used. Transition. She told me she'd been unsure about us for a long time. Not unhappy, just uncertain. Like she'd outgrown something without realizing it until it already felt too tight. Instead of leaving, she stayed. Because leaving abruptly would hurt me. Because she cared. Because she didn't want to be the villain. So she did what she thought was gentler. She lined things up. She stayed in the relationship while emotionally detaching. While reconnecting with the other person. While making sure she wouldn't be alone when she left. She called it being responsible. I asked her if the other person knew about me. She nodded. They knew everything, she said. That's why they told me tonight had to be the night. That's when it clicked. I wasn't being cheated on. I was being phased out. Every argument we'd had recently, the calm ones, the ones that ended quickly, suddenly made sense. She wasn't fighting because she'd already decided not to invest. Every time I tried to fix something, she let me. Not because she believed in it, but because it bought her time. Time to stabilize me. Time to prepare her exit. Time to make sure the landing was soft for her. I asked her why she didn't just leave earlier. She said, "Because I didn't want to break you." That sentence should have sounded caring. Didn't. It sounded strategic. I realized then that all the reassurance she'd given me lately, telling me we were okay, telling me she loved me, had a different purpose. Not honesty, maintenance. She'd been keeping me calm long enough to let go safely. And the worst part? She truly believed she was being kind. By the time she finished explaining, I wasn't angry yet. I was numb, because the version of betrayal she was describing wasn't reckless or impulsive. It was calculated, and she still hadn't told me what tonight actually meant. Tonight meant she was leaving. Not tomorrow. Not soon. Tonight. She said it quietly, like she was trying not to spook me, like I was something fragile that might shatter if she moved too fast. She already had a bag packed. Not everything, just essentials. Clothes, charger, documents. The rest, she said, we could figure out later. I asked her how long she'd been planning this. She hesitated. That hesitation told me more than the number would have. She said months. Months of shared meals, shared beds, shared I love yous, all while an exit plan sat in a calendar with a reminder labeled "Talk to him." I asked her if she ever planned to tell me the truth. She said yes. Eventually, when I was stable. That word again. Stable. Like my emotional state was a variable she needed to control before executing a decision she'd already made. I asked her something I didn't even know I cared about until it left my mouth. If I hadn't seen the message, would you have told me tonight? She didn't answer. She just looked down. That was the answer. She walked toward the door with her bag, then stopped, turned back, told me she was sorry, told me I didn't do anything wrong, told me I deserved someone who was sure. All true, all useless. When the door closed behind her, the apartment felt wrong. Too quiet, like a set after the actors leave. Later that night, I opened my laptop. Not to stalk her, not to spiral, just to distract myself. That's when I noticed something I hadn't before. The shared calendar wasn't new. There were older entries, dozens of them. Dates marked during moments I thought we were doing well. Vacations, milestones. Nights she'd cried in my arms and told me she was scared of losing me. All of it coexisted with reminders like, don't rush, make sure he's okay, wait until he's settled. That's when the shock really hit. She hadn't stayed because she loved me. She stayed because she needed me functional until she didn't. I wasn't a partner. I was a buffer. And the most uncomfortable truth? Part of me understands why she did it. That's what makes it hard to hate her. Because she didn't leave to hurt me. She just made sure the hurt wouldn't touch her. If you were in my place, would you rather be left suddenly and honestly, or slowly managed until you're no longer needed? If this ending messed with your head, don't just scroll away. Subscribe before you leave. Stories like this don't give clean answers, and neither does real life. I realized something was wrong when she said, "Promise me you won't get mad," and smiled like she already knew I would. The smile didn't match the moment. The room felt staged, like she'd practiced this conversation somewhere else first. And when she finally spoke, I understood this wasn't a confession. It was a test. A test I was about to fail without knowing the rules. Here's how it happened. We'd been together long enough to stop performing for each other. No constant texting. No pretending every day was exciting. Comfortable. Predictable. The kind of relationship people say they want when they're tired of drama. That's why the shift caught me off guard. She became softer. Kinder in a way that felt deliberate. She checked in more. Asked how I was feeling. Complimented me for small things I'd always done. At first, I thought we were finally syncing up. But then I noticed something strange. Whenever I talked about us, future plans, trips, even casual next year comments, she didn't argue or agree. She'd just nod, smile, change the subject, like the future wasn't a place she planned to visit with me. One night, after dinner, she poured us drinks and sat closer than usual, rested her head on my shoulder, took a deep breath like someone about to step off a ledge. That's when she said it. "I think we should be more honest with each other." That sentence alone isn't dangerous. It's what came next. She told me she'd been talking to someone, not flirting, not cheating, just processing feelings. Someone who knew her before me, someone who understood her better. I asked if she still loved me. She said yes immediately, too immediately. I asked if she wanted to be with me. That question took longer. She said she didn't want to lose me. That wasn't the same answer. Then she said the line that changed everything. "I just need to know. If I decided to move on someday, you'd be okay, right?" I laughed because it sounded hypothetical, like she was asking about a movie plot. She didn't laugh back. That's when I realized she wasn't asking for reassurance. She was measuring damage. She watched my face carefully as I answered, watched how much it hurt, how fast I recovered, how calm I stayed. She nodded like she'd learned something important. And right then, I understood something terrifying. This wasn't about honesty. It wasn't about clarity. It was about seeing how much I could take before she decided what to do next. And I had no idea what answer would have saved me. After that conversation, nothing officially changed. That was the part that messed with me the most. She didn't ask for space. She didn't suggest a break. She didn't say she was leaving. Instead, she went back to normal. Too normal. She still kissed me goodbye in the mornings. Still asked what I wanted for dinner. Still laughed at the same dumb jokes. If anything, she became more affectionate. More attentive. Like she was compensating for something I couldn't see yet. I started second-guessing myself. Maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe she really had just been processing feelings. People talk things through. That doesn't automatically mean betrayal. But the questions she asked after that night stuck with me. Not "how are you doing?" but "are you okay?" Not "do you feel secure with me?" but "you're pretty resilient, right?" She said things like that casually, almost playfully. But they landed wrong. Like she was collecting data points instead of checking in emotionally. Then she started telling me stories. Stories about people she knew who stayed friends after breaking up. Stories about couples who outgrew each other and still respected one another. Stories about how sometimes love doesn't end because of betrayal, just timing. Every story had the same subtext. This could be us. I noticed she stopped bringing up the person she said she was just talking to. Not because it ended, but because she didn't need to mention them anymore. Whatever role they played had already been established. One night, I asked her directly if she was planning to leave. She looked genuinely surprised. "No," she said. "Why would you think that?" I repeated her own words back to her. The questions, the hypotheticals, the way she kept testing my reactions. She sighed, like I'd misunderstood something obvious. "I just want to know we're emotionally mature," she said. "I don't want to feel trapped by the idea that leaving would destroy you." That sentence sat heavy between us, because it quietly made her happiness my responsibility. If I looked too hurt, too attached, too affected, then staying became a burden, something she'd have to escape from. So I did what felt safest. I downplayed everything. I told her I'd be okay no matter what, that I'd survive, that I didn't need her to stay for my sake, that I wanted her to be happy, even if that happiness didn't involve me. She smiled when I said that, not relieved, reassured. That's when I realized I was actively helping her detach. I was making it easier, and the more understanding I became, the colder she got, not cruel, just distant in a way that felt final. She started making plans without me. Not secret plans, just independent ones. Trips with friends, weekends away, new routines I wasn't part of. Still, she didn't leave. Instead, she watched me adjust, watched me cope, watched me prove I'd be okay. And deep down, I started to sense something awful. This wasn't about whether she would leave. It was about when she'd feel justified enough to do it without guilt. And I was unknowingly giving her permission, one calm response at a time. She left on a Tuesday. No argument, no blowub, no dramatic goodbye. Just a calm conversation over coffee, like we were discussing logistics instead of the end of a relationship. She told me she'd thought about it a lot, that she appreciated how emotionally safe I'd been, that watching me handle everything so maturely helped her realize she was ready to move on. Ready, like this had been a process with milestones I didn't know I was participating in. She said she felt relieved knowing I'd be okay. That word again, okay. I asked her when she decided. She said she didn't remember exactly. It had been gradual, a feeling that settled in once she saw I wasn't dependent on her happiness. I asked her if she'd stayed longer than she wanted to just to make sure I could handle it. She didn't deny it. She said she needed time to let go without feeling like a bad person. I realized then that every conversation we'd had lately, every check-in, every hypothetical, every "are you okay?" hadn't been about us at all. They were about her conscience. She wasn't testing the relationship. She was testing her exit. And I'd passed. After she moved out, people told me I handled it well, that I was strong, that not everyone could be so composed. But at night, alone, that composure felt like a mistake. Because if I'd been Messier, if I'd fought harder, if I'd shown more pain, would she have stayed longer? Or would she have just left sooner, without the illusion of kindness? That's the part that still messes with me. She didn't leave despite my calmness. She left because of it. And now I don't know what's worse. Being abandoned for being too needy, or being abandoned for being too understanding. If you've ever wondered whether being emotionally mature can actually cost you someone, hit subscribe before you go. Stories like this don't end cleanly, they linger just like the questions they leave behind. The moment she said, "I never actually chose you," I stopped listening to everything else. We were already breaking up when she said it. Calm, civil, almost polite. But that sentence didn't belong in a breakup, it belonged in a confession. And I knew instantly that whatever came next was going to rewrite our entire history. Here's how it happened. Our relationship didn't start dramatically. No fireworks, no obsession. Started conveniently. We met during a weird phase in both our lives. I was stable, predictable, emotionally available. She was coming out of something messy and said she wanted peace. I fit that. At least I thought I did. She used to joke about how easy it was with me, how there was no chaos, no guessing games, no emotional whiplash. I took it as a compliment. I thought that meant trust. But looking back, there were signs I ignored because they didn't look like red flags. They looked like maturity. She never fully merged her life with mine. We spent time together, but our worlds stayed oddly separate. Different friend groups, different routines. She never invited me into parts of her life that mattered emotionally. I told myself that was healthy. She talked about her ex sometimes. Not obsessively, not bitterly, just unfinished, like a story she'd stopped telling mid-sentence. I didn't feel threatened. I should have. Whenever we argued, she'd shut down instead of fighting. Not cold, thoughtful. She'd say things like, "I just need clarity," or "I don't want to react emotionally." I thought that meant she was careful. What it actually meant was she was undecided. The night everything cracked open, we were sitting across from each other, talking about the future in the most neutral way possible. No plans, no excitement, just hypotheticals. She stared at her hands for a long time before saying she didn't think she could keep doing this. I asked her why. That's when she said it. "I never actually chose you. I just didn't choose against you." I laughed at first. I thought I misunderstood. She didn't laugh. She explained that when we got together, she wasn't ready to commit, but she also wasn't ready to be alone. I was safe, available, kind. I didn't make things harder, so she stayed. Not because she was sure, but because she didn't have to decide. She said she kept waiting for certainty to appear, waiting for a moment where she'd suddenly know I was the one. It never came. And now, sitting across from me, she said she finally understood why. Because I was never competing with other people. I was competing with a choice she never made. And what terrified me wasn't that she was leaving. It was realizing that for the entire relationship, I wasn't someone she picked. I was someone she settled into while waiting to feel different. And she still hadn't told me what finally made her decide to walk away. After she said it, the room went quiet in that heavy way where silence feels louder than arguing. "I never chose you." I kept replaying the sentence in my head, trying to soften it, trying to interpret it in a way that hurt less. But every version meant the same thing. She didn't wake up one day and decide to be with me. She just stayed. Let time do the work so she wouldn't have to. I asked her why she stayed at all. She said, "Because you made it easy to breathe." That sounded like a compliment until she explained what she meant. With me, she didn't have to feel desperate. She didn't have to prove anything. She didn't have to chase or be chased. There was no urgency, no risk, no emotional gamble. I realized she wasn't describing love. She was describing comfort. She told me she'd always believed that love would feel obvious, overwhelming, like a pull she couldn't ignore. And when she didn't feel that with me, she assumed it would grow over time. So she waited. Months passed, then years. And instead of growing, the uncertainty just settled in quietly, like furniture she learned to live around. I asked her if she ever loved me. She paused for a long time. Then she said, "I cared about you deeply." That answer landed worse than a no. She told me she'd compare her feelings for me to how she felt in past relationships. The intensity, the longing, the obsession. With me, everything felt even, balanced. She thought that meant healthy, but deep down it just meant she was never afraid of losing me, because she never felt like she'd lose herself without me. I asked her why she was telling me all this now. She said something that still messes with me. Because it finally feels unfair to let you keep thinking this was mutual. She said she'd reached a point where staying felt dishonest, where every "I love you" felt like borrowing words she wasn't fully entitled to. I asked her what changed. She said she'd met someone new, not someone she was dating, not someone she was in love with, just someone who made her feel that pull again. and that was enough to make her realize she'd never felt it with me. What hurt wasn't that she was leaving for someone else. It was that I'd unknowingly been the control group, the comparison point, the place she stayed until something better reminded her what choice was supposed to feel like. She said she was sorry for wasting my time, but she didn't see it that way. She said she'd learned a lot about herself, about relationships, about what she wanted. I asked her if she ever thought about what I wanted. She looked genuinely confused by the question, and that's when I understood something painful. In her story, I wasn't a main character. I was a phase, pause between decisions, and she still hadn't told me the worst part, the reason she chose now to finally walk away. The reason she chose now came out almost accidentally. I asked her one last question, not angry, not accusing, just tired. Why today? She looked relieved that I finally asked. She said she'd been afraid of this moment for a long time, afraid that if she stayed any longer, she'd lose the chance to leave without feeling like a villain. Then she said the sentence that still doesn't sit right with me. I realized if I stayed, I'd start resenting you for not being the person I needed, even though that wouldn't be your fault. Think about that. She wasn't leaving because I did something wrong. She wasn't leaving because we were toxic. She was leaving because staying kindly had an expiration date. She told me she didn't want to wake up one day angry at me for a choice she never made. So she chose herself. Late, carefully, cleanly. She said she hoped I'd understand someday. That I'd see this wasn't betrayal, just honesty arriving late. I asked her if she thought the timing was fair. She said fairness wasn't really part of it. That answer haunted me more than anything else, because she wasn't cruel. She wasn't manipulative in the obvious way. She didn't cheat. She didn't lie outright. She just let me believe something was mutual while she waited to see if certainty would show up. And when it didn't, she walked away with clarity and left me with questions. The worst one being this: how do you grieve a relationship that was real to you, but only provisional to the other person? I don't hate her. That's the problem. I don't know if I should, because part of me understands how easy it is to stay when things are good enough, especially when leaving feels like it would cause unnecessary damage. But another part of me can't stop wondering how many people are in relationships right now where one person is choosing and the other is just waiting to be chosen. If this story made you uncomfortable, if it made you question past relationships or current ones, don't just move on like nothing happened. Subscribe before you leave. These stories aren't meant to give closure. They're meant to make you think long after the video ends.